just to start us off, would love for you to just give us a bit of background about who is Carol and just talk us through who you are and where you are at the moment in terms of your career.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Flo, for giving me this opportunity to share my experience and insights. So, Zimbabwean born, I attended a Catholic school, just one Catholic school, in my schooling, a Catholic private school. And then thereafter, I proceeded to university and I studied as an economist. So the first 5 years of my career, I was in banking, sort of really doing hardcore banking, credit analysis, risk management, international banking, commercial banking. I was very young and curious. So within those 5 years, I had a number of roles in a various number of institutions because I wanted to just really explore the lay of the land in terms of financial institutions. Then thereafter, I moved, still within the banking sector, I moved into training. And then that's where my HR career began. I enjoyed the insight I got into the profession, being in HR. And then, that's the decision I made to stay in my career. So then the first 15 years of my career, I was in financial institutions working based in Zimbabwe. And then thereafter, I moved to South Africa. And then my move to South Africa was a move now into the mining sector. I joined a global mining company. And I was their sort of HR business partner for Africa. I then got the opportunity to centralize their recruitment functions in Africa across their franchise. So I was in a delivery operational role for 2 years. And then I got the opportunity again, still with the mining company, to go to the HQ in London and join their global design strategy team, on talent. So I was there for 2 years and then moved to Canada in the same role for another 2 years. I then made a decision to return to Africa. And I returned with another entity, General Electric. I returned into Kenya. Again, they were looking for an African leader to set up their recruitment function across the continent. So I was with them for 5 years, 3 years in Kenya, and then 2 years I moved back to South Africa. And then I left GE, and then I then sort of answered the call to serve, answered the clarion call to serve, and I've come to Zimbabwe, again, helping set up an investment agency that promotes and facilitates investment into Zimbabwe. So briefly, that's the story of my career.
Yeah,
and the journey continues. The journey continues for sure.
And I think, one of the things just reading through and as you're talking through it, you've been to a lot of places. There's a lot of just very different types of roles there, but also in terms of the locations and the geographies. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the similarities you've experienced in terms of moving across the world, but also some of the differences as you moved in those various locations?
So one thing I found is when you're working in the African continent, you definitely get the opportunity to broaden your experience because each country is different. So I had the opportunity to go early into regional roles, sub-regional roles, and then sort of Pan-African roles. So each country is different. So you need then to always sort of understand and then adapt your approach, but the outcome that you're looking for is the same. Going into the first world is interesting because sometimes there's a perception that, okay, maybe someone coming from Africa, are you coming to learn or are you coming to contribute? I would say a bit of both, but I think one needs to confidently, when you step out of Africa, you need to do that confidently because you're definitely taking a kind of experience that they don't have. The mature markets are more, I would say, more straightforward, less challenging, I would say less complexity, when I'm just talking from the point of recruitment and talent management. It's more straightforward, but Africa is still being in the growth phase. Definitely, sometimes we don't have the depth and breadth of talent that we require. And, some of the practices may not be sort of maybe sort of leading or best in class. Ultimately, processes, at the basic level are the same, but I think the tools that you would find, outside Africa would definitely be more advanced. And there's probably more of an effort that's put around things like sort of employer brand, sort of employer value proposition. So this is what I would probably say are some of the differences and the similarities that I found across the region. But personally, I would say for me, I managed to get the blend. So having had the Africa experience of growth markets with complexity, then going into the first world, understanding leading practices, I could then come back now into Africa and be able to, apply the two as required.
No, thank you for that. And so if you're thinking about like the people on this call where they're thinking to themselves, they're trying to grow their careers, they're looking at their professional career in the diaspora. Obviously, there's that aspect of the fact that you are a minority. What are some of the skills that you think would be most valuable for people as they're trying to grow their career in the diaspora? What are some of the things that you have found have been useful for you as you've developed your career as well that you think would help?
Yeah. I would say, right from the get-go, you need to have a career plan. You need to be very intentional about what it is that you're doing. So, in my case, when I started out, I had a country role in Zimbabwe, and then I went sub-regional, and I was like, okay, we want to do Pan-Africa, then let's go global. So then from global, okay, now where next do I want to go to? So everything must always be, you must always be a step ahead in terms of what do I want to do next. If you've had the opportunity to go out, already in the diaspora, I would say don't have a mindset to say I've arrived. I know sometimes you might think, oh, okay, I've left where I was, I've arrived. I think you must always be asking yourself, am I learning? Am I growing? Normally, when we look at it from a talent management perspective, we generally say 2 years in a role is good, after which you can start looking to say what next. So look for growth in your role, and growth doesn't always mean promotion. Growth means broadening your experience, right? So in whatever it is you might be doing, how can you go broader and how can you go deep? Because once you go broad and deep, that's what sets you up to then move on to the next level, right? It's not a race. It's not a race to get to the top. And these are the new approaches that are there when it comes to sort of career management. It's no longer a career ladder. It's a career path. So sometimes you may need to go sideways. And I think have a goal to say, ultimately, this is the level or the role I would like to have, and try then and look at people who are in those positions and map out what were their career journeys, what are the critical experiences they needed to have, what are the critical capabilities they have built within their toolkits, and then that's what will then kind of set you up for success. Something I've also done is I think be intentional about who you work for, right? I've generally always said to myself, maybe I want to work for global brands that are leading within their spaces. So have that kind of discernment when you're making your career choices. It mustn't be a job. It mustn't just be a job, right? And I would also just say, love what you do. So look for work that really stimulates you and gets you out of bed each morning. Because if it doesn't do that and it's just a job, then you're not likely to go far. You won't go above and beyond. Something that has also just really helped me, again, I think when you work for organizations that have broader reach, whether it's continental or global, that generally implies that there's opportunities for internal movement. And that's what I've been able to leverage working for sort of regional global institutions. It's the internal movement that has facilitated that. And in addition to that, I've had awesome leaders. I think you need to have, it doesn't just happen, but if you have leaders that are great advocates for you, that speak for you when you are not in the room, that is also very key. you need sponsors. You need sponsors. You need coaches. I've had coaches along the way, actually getting managers, my leaders, to sponsor me to have, a personal coach. Because I think it's good to have an independent person who will ask you, pertinent questions that will make you really reflect on yourself and where it is that you're going. And one thing that's also been really great is, grow with your team, if you happen to be a people leader. So whatever interventions I did as a leader, I then did the same with my team. So then that, you grow together. But ultimately, yes, I know being in the diaspora, you got to work doubly, triply hard. And yeah, be intentional about growing your networks. That definitely helps. So I'll pause there.
Well, thank you for that. And I might just say, because we've got a couple more people who have joined, that if you do have any questions, can you just pop them into the chat as well? And as we work through these, we'll also pop some of those questions through to Carol as she's talking. But I think I've really picked up on something that you talked about there in terms of the networks, in terms of the coaches, in terms of the mentors. And you being living in this world, how important is it for people to work in those networks versus just, deciding I want to apply for a job and just going on a job search, intranet site and applying for a job? Can you just talk us through, in your experience, how many roles actually come through job search versus how many come through contacts and networks, and how important are contacts and networks?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to think. All the jobs that I have had, I've either been approached. So definitely, I would say have a strong digital footprint. And LinkedIn is the predominant platform that facilitates that. So I think have a digital footprint, and on that, on LinkedIn, be intentional, initiate connections, follow organizations or content that is meaningful and try and comment. Also maybe showcase some of your other interests, just sort of outside your day job. I have not looked for a job probably for the last 15 years.
Wow.
So it's either been on LinkedIn or maybe people that I've worked with who have kind of made those connections for me. So that really does work. And, it will yield results.
Well, that's really insightful, because I think one of the conversations that I tend to have quite regularly is people saying, I'm struggling, I can't, I keep on applying and I'm not getting a job, what's going on? So I think that feedback is really, really valuable.
Yeah. It's not enough to just work hard, even in an entity. If you're looking to grow, it's not enough to just work hard. You sort of put your head down, that's, yeah, you need to do more. And the other thing I'd also say, I think you need to have the courage to get out of a comfort zone, right? Because if you're in a comfort zone, you're not going to challenge yourself, you're not going to grow. And almost chart your own path. I always say, more recently of late, I've been saying to some people, your career choices don't have to make sense to anybody. And you don't have to explain yourself to anybody. When I was leaving Canada to come back to Africa, people were like, why are you going back to Africa? I'm like, for me, I have a great opportunity and I want to be part of Africa's transformation. And people in Africa are yearning for people with expertise, who understand, who've worked in the continent and who've worked globally. The continent is hungry for people with that expertise. So, I really encourage people. And, and it's a trade-off. I think you always just got to look at where you are in your personal journey, your family circumstances. When does it make sense to make a move? Because, yeah, there's no perfect place. This is what I always say. There's no perfect place. It just really just depends on the season in your life, what makes sense for you.
Yeah. And this is, I'm going to pick up the one you just put in, Josh, because I think it's pertinent to what we're talking about right now. So the question was, what hard or soft skills have you had to learn and apply to adapt quickly to a new role? Because a lot of people's challenge with that, have that struggle of them moving into a new role and adapting to new roles.
Mm-hmm. I would say one of the soft skills is you've got to be open to feedback, and you've got to ask for feedback, in terms of how you show up, right? So you may be very good technically on the job, but how do you engage with others? How do you influence? And I think it's important that you ask for that candid feedback in terms of how you show up again. Because when your name is mentioned in a room for an opportunity, you want positive things to be said. I've had learned, so good listening skills, good influencing skills, managing conflict, understanding different cultures, right? There's definitely many different styles. So that's a key one. And I suppose, again, being agile, being able to, really then again, just stretch yourself, but I think still taking care of yourself. In terms of hard skills, I'd always say you've always just got to stay ahead of the game. I think you got to be curious. You got to have a curious mindset and understand what's happening within your space. And again, there's a lot of information out there. Working in talent management, talent acquisition, it's now a lot of digital enablement. So again, this is something that, I've had to, stay on top of in understanding. So what are the new tools? How can we work smarter?
Yeah. And just picking up on that, because one of the other questions that I tend to get a lot, which I'd love your perspective on, is people who say, I've really studied. I've studied so hard. I've got a master's in my field. I've got 3 degrees. But they're promoting some guy who only has a diploma above me, and I don't understand. And unfortunately, sometimes people automatically say racism. But what are your thoughts around the whole education piece and how we value education versus other skills?
Yeah, education is great, but what's more important is the application, right? How do you then apply that to what you do? And what's the value add? What's the impact, right? That's the true test. So delivering the certificate does not entitle you to a promotion or salary increase. It doesn't entitle you to anything. The key, the crux of the matter is how do you apply that, and how does it add value to the organization?
Well, no, thanks for that. Now, I'm going to take it to another direction, which is one of the challenges that we have, in that people seem to come through the grad ranks, get to middle management, and then they hit a bit of a blocker in terms of, quite a few people would like to get to that C-suite level, and they aren't quite getting there. So could you tell us a bit about the difference between those middle management roles and the C-suite, and when you're starting to want to go into that C-suite level, some of the things that people can start to think about in terms of how they position themselves?
The big difference is, middle management, that's management. Once you're now stepping up, we're now talking leadership, right? And I think there's many different leadership competencies that you now need to have. So it's almost like you need to start practicing and acting like a leader. So, act as what, the person that you want to be, and show up in the organization. So, and it could even just be simple things. So, a leader does not direct, does not control people. And the key thing about being a leader is that you must have ideally learn to manage people, because now you're leading people, right? So try and get positions that allow you to lead, to manage people. That's a key capability, to go up the ranks. So how do you lead? And again, I think it's all about the value. What value? There's something they also call executive presence. Again, just how do you show up when you show up in a room? What attention do you get when you talk to people? Listen, what's the quality of your youth? What's the quality of your contributions? You actually have to plan your engagement and your impact and what it is that you're going to say, right? So you have to be very thoughtful in everything that you do. When you come to leadership, it's very complex. it's very demanding. So you need to show that you've got that capacity to stretch, to really, really be stretched, and be able sort of to multitask, manage complexity, and not get too flustered. You know, just kind of keep calm about it. At the top, it gets hotter. Some call it can be political.
Mm-hmm.
And the key thing is, you know, don't play the politics. Don't be a politician, but be aware of it. And then just sort of see how you can position yourself. So the higher up you get here, they say you have fewer friends.
Yes,
so,
I can believe that.
Yeah, you got to be very resilient. You've got to be very resilient and strategic. So this is another thing, a key thing about being a leader is that really strategic mindset. So you're transitioning from operational execution to really being able to think strategically. So you now need to have that awareness, that business acumen, internal, external. You've got to read widely, you got to know what's happening, you've got to be able to project, etc. That's really, really key.
No, thank you for that. I think it's and to your point earlier, it's about starting to position and already that one step ahead of thinking about positioning yourself and getting all these skills so that you're ready for it when the role comes. Yeah.
And again, I'll just go back, you know, your team will contribute to your success as a leader. You know, you cannot be a leader on your own. You cannot succeed on your own. So some people fail to make that transition because of their people skills.
Wow. And so just talking about that in terms of people who fail to make transitions, what are some of the common challenges you've seen people have to overcome in developing their careers? What are some of the things that you would call out to people that, as you've sort of navigated through TA?
I'm trying to think. Some of the people that have failed to transition, again, is the world of work is changing. So you need to then also position sort of refresh your skills. Yeah. Sort of refresh your skills, show that you have that hunger. Yeah. And sometimes your profession may become a bit redundant, what it is that you're doing. So again, this is where you're stuck in the old way of doing things. You're in a comfort zone. You will not grow. And others I've also seen, it depends what matters to you. I think if you're in a job motivated by the money only, you won't get far. Money is important. You want to be adequately rewarded. But I think if you're going to put that first before all else, you may get stuck along the way. I think people need to probably consider more experiential, work. I think work that is more rewarding and more fulfilling.
Yeah. And so I'm going to cut to the two questions that have popped up on the chat. So one is just around, how do we get comfortable with being stretched when for a lot of us all we longed for was to be able to come here to the diaspora, and now we're here? How do you encourage people to get that stretch? Because for some people they feel like, to your point earlier, they feel like they've arrived.
Yeah, and you need to ask for it, right? No one's going to come to you and deliver anything on a silver platter. So if you see there's something you want, we always say when it comes to your career, drive your own career, right? Nobody owes you anything. So ask for that growth. But of course, make sure that you are fully on top of that which you are hired to do, that you're executing it well, and you have capacity to do something else. So stretches could come either to be part of a project or you want to shadow somebody. So you ask for it and have that conversation as part of your sort of L&D, learning and development, performance management, conversations. Because managing people is not easy, and it's not something that people managers, it's not something that all people managers are good at. So you really, really have to drive your own career and ask for that which you want, and don't give up. Sometimes it may take a while to happen. And sometimes, again, even just build your own connections. And as you build, understand what people are doing. So you might even just learn just from sharing with your peers in the workplace.
And then a curveball. So young Melissa, I'm going to say young because you're still studying, says my degree that I'm studying criminology and criminal justice, my mom says my degree is useless. Is she right? So anything you could say about types of degrees that people pick and jobs?
Again, so the question would be, what made you, what led to that decision for you to study that, right? Was it an intentional choice? Was there considered thought that went into that? That's just always the starting point. Because then this is where you've always got to be kind of self-aware. You've got to know yourself. Because sometimes if you just do something for the sake of, you may get stuck. So we can have this conversation offline, just to kind of really understand, how did you get to where you are today? What are your interests? What are your capabilities? If you were not very intentional about it, then the conversation could be, okay, how can we repurpose this? What are some of the skills you've got in this? The capabilities you've acquired through this. It could be sort of an inquiring mindset, etc. How might we redirect that, maybe to law or something else? But it needs to be a conversation. And again, what I'd also say is, traditionally, our parents only know what they know. So they only know the traditional careers that, okay, doctor, engineer, lawyer, maybe those are the serious professions. So sometimes their comments are based on not having full information. So I think you don't be discouraged by the comments, again, that people may make. It's because maybe they don't know any better, but they mean well.
No. Well, thank you so much for that, Carol. So I'm going to wind this up with my final question. And this is just around, what advice would you give to people listening in terms of that next step in developing their career? What's the nuggets of wisdom from your experience that you think would be helpful?
Yeah, and I think, again, I'll just reiterate, what I shared before is sort of be intentional about doing that which is meaningful to you, right? And motivates you. Don't just settle for a job. And then thereafter, have the plan to say, okay, am I happy to be in my current location? Where else, would I like to go? And then you start, putting the building blocks together. So anything is possible. And, ask somebody who knows somebody who can connect you to information. So just really go out there. I think once you start asking the questions and connecting with people, you'll be amazed, at the opportunities that are out there.